Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Wednesday by our BIST and by our community meeting and education session. Today's topic, as I mentioned earlier, we will be covering Advocacy 101. So this workshop will introduce starting points of advocacy, including how to identify the right decision makers, tell a compelling story, make a clear, focused ask for change. Participants will also learn practical strategies for preparing for meetings, communicating effectively, and following up to build momentum toward a more inclusive and barrier-free society. So we are really thrilled to have our guest speaker, Gift, with us today. Gift is an advocacy specialist from March of Dimes, Canada. A little bit about Gift. Gift is an advocacy specialist, and as I mentioned, he is from March of Dimes, Canada. And Gift is the primary point of contact for the Disability Advocacy Network, where he works to expand its reach and empower people with disabilities, along with their families and caregivers, to advocate effectively. Drawing on 17 years of experience in accessibility and disability rights, he champions inclusive systems across policy, education, technology, and the built environment. His career is across various sectors, roles as an assistive technology instructor at Independent Living Montreal, an access advisor at McGill's University Office for Students with Disabilities, and later an assistive technology specialist on March of Dimes Canada's Tech for Good team. Beyond March of Dimes Canada, he also holds positions at Tshuma Consulting and Blurring the Boundaries. Gift is also a disability rights activist, accessibility consultant, and music composer. He has advised government post-secondary institutions and nonprofits across Ontario and Quebec. In 2022, he received CBC's Quebec's Black Changemaker Award for his contributions to social justice and community empowerment. So we would like to please give a warm welcome to Gift. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here today, to be with all of you. I'm excited to be in discussion with you all. Just as a quick info here, please feel free to ask questions as we go. You do not need to wait until the end of the presentation. So you can either ask your question through the chat in the Zoom platform here, or you can raise your hand and if you're able, or use the raise hand function on Zoom, and feel free to unmute your mic and ask your questions. So I want this to be kind of a very casual presentations session where we are able to both interact with each other as we go. Does that sound okay for everyone? Yes. All right. Perfect. So introduction. So I am Gift Tshuma Advocacy Specialist with the Public Affairs team at March of Dimes. For visual description, I am a Black man who is a wheelchair user in his mid-30s, and I'm wearing glasses, have dreadlocks, and I'm wearing a white short sleeve shirt that has patterns of bicycles on them. It's kind of a fun, casual shirt that I was feeling today to wear. Um, Yeah, so before we get started, I just want to say our land acknowledgement. As a settler, I respectfully acknowledge that the area of Petit Kodiak in New Brunswick, which is where I am, is on the unceded and unsurrendered traditional territory of the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples. It's really important that land acknowledgements are meaningful. As such, I would like to also reflect on our subject matter today in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. As we discuss the rights of people with disabilities today, we want to consider how these issues are kind of linked and intertwined with struggles for Indigenous rights and self-determination, and commit to upholding dignity, mutual respect, and belonging across intersections. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to skip this second slide because that's the end. Yeah, there we go. So let me speak a little bit about what March of Dimes Canada is. It's an organization that was founded over 70 years ago. It is one of the country's largest nonprofit organizations that are supporting people living with disabilities. And our main mission as an organization is to be Canada's leading service provider, which means also we want to be Canada's leading resource and advocate that's able to empower people with disabilities to live and thrive in communities nationwide. And our vision is to create an inclusive, barrier-free society for people with disabilities. So that's essentially what March of Dimes Canada is in a nutshell. Next slide. So, Madison had talked briefly about the group that I manage, which is called the Disability Advocacy Network. What it is, it's a national network to build your advocacy skills and to help you speak out on issues that are impacting the disability community. And this network is made up of more than 350 people with disabilities across the country, and we meet to go over workshops, and those workshops are covering different skills related to advocacy, some of which you will learn about today. It could be, how do you advocate for yourself within the community? How do you advocate for yourself within the government or the hospital setting or the school setting, whatever it may be. It's basically to make you the best advocate you can be. And the way we do that is we do that through workshops, we do that through monthly newsletters, and we do that through advocacy campaigns, campaigns that we are trying to get the government to pay attention to, whether it's the federal government, whether it's the provincial or municipal government. We do that through campaigns. And we also create resources and events to kind of help you have something to refer to and to work with in your own time within your own personal advocacy journey. And to complement all of that, we have coffee time sessions, which are essentially laid back, casual sessions where we meet with other advocates and we basically talk about what were our thoughts or what our comments were for the workshops that we covered prior. It basically gives people a chance to ask questions. How can they apply the tools and skills that they learned in the previous session? How can they apply those in the real world? How does this apply within my work? How does this apply within my my school or my community? So that's what coffee time sessions is. And then I also offer one-on-one office hours as well, which is a chance to meet with me and for you to get one-on-one time and ask me questions around advocacy related issues, or if you are interested um, to advocate for, I don't know, it could be parking spaces within your neighborhood, or you want the snow cleared, or you have an issue with a healthcare professional and you don't know how to speak up for yourself in those settings, I'll be able to kind of coach you in these office hours on a one-to-one basis. So that's pretty much what the Disability Advocacy Network is, and some of the things that we provide to everyone. Does anyone have any questions so far? No? All right, next slide. So let us talk about advocacy. What is advocacy? Can anyone tell me what comes to mind when you hear the word advocacy? What does it mean to you? Feel free to make a guess. What is advocacy? What does that mean to you? I'm gonna start with Phyllis and then go to Doris. Feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah.
I think advocacy is about standing up for yourself or trying
Mm,
to like say what you're trying to say, but in a um yeah, like to stand up for yourself and to say what you're trying to say to get the point across so that your needs are met.
absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a good response. Doris?
Hi. I think similarly, it's um, being able to speak kind of to the audience that you're trying to speak to in a way that it hits them.
Mm-hmm.
And also being able to speak up not just for yourself, but for other people and or your cause.
Mm, absolutely. I like both your answers, standing up for yourself and speaking up for you people, for yourself and for the people around you, your community, for the cause. I like that. In a nutshell, the way I would like help you define advocacy is you are telling a story. You are telling a story to a decision maker to influence action. So you're telling a story to a decision maker not to do something or to do something, right? You're telling them that they should make a change in this area, or you're telling them not to make a change in this particular area. So you're telling a story that's impacting you personally, or a story that's impacting you and your community, the people around you. And you're trying to influence action. You're trying to influence change. Okay, so if you're trying to remember what advocacy is later on, just think of three things. It's a story, and what are you doing with that story? You're telling it to a decision maker. Who is a decision maker? It could be an institution, it could be a system, it could be a person. It really takes on many forms. A decision maker could be any of those. And then once you have a story and once you've identified your decision maker, you're trying to influence them to do something or not to go ahead with whatever they're planning to do because it may create harm, it may create inequality, however that may look like. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah? All right. Next slide. Why we advocate. So the goal of why we advocate is we want to build an inclusive, barrier-free society for people with disabilities. And how does that look like? How does a barrier-free society look like? Well, some of the issues that people may be advocating for could be the following. They could be advocating for financial security. They could be advocating for accessibility. like better accessibility within the system, better accessibility within the physical infrastructure, better accessibility within some of the policies that are being made, right? And other issues that we may advocate for is independence, autonomy, for you to be your whole self, for you to be free, for you not to be, told how you should live your life, right? For you to be able to have the power to make the decisions surrounding your life, right? And then also other things that people may be advocating for is access to care, access to attendant care, access to support, access to financial resources tied to your care. So those are some of the things that you would typically be advocating for. I'm curious, within the room here, are there other issues outside of the ones that I've listed here, that you have personally advocated for, or things you are wanting to advocate for? Do you mind sharing that with me?
Hi, hello. Something I want to mention is that, as somebody with post-concussion symptoms,
Mhm,
it's invisible. It's an invisible disability. So sometimes it's really hard talking about it to healthcare providers, especially if um, they don't think you have an issue, that you're saying like, "Hi, I'm having headaches. I'm having all these symptoms," but they're like,
mhm,
"Oh, it's been like a year and you shouldn't be having these issues." So that is something I've encountered.
hmm. And thank you so much, Mira. And if you don't mind, like, how have you advocated for yourself in that scenario when you are not being believed about your reality, about the barriers that you experience, which are not, visible? How do you go about advocating for yourself in those situations?
So my situation's a bit complicated because I was in a motor vehicle accident, and that's how I um acquired my brain injury.
Mm-hmm,
A lot of times I find that um, it's very difficult. And I think one of the bridges that I have is my concussion clinic, where, there are healthcare providers that understand
mm-hmm.
the difficulties and the symptoms. So that kind of helps me. But I find that it's very difficult. It's very difficult to advocate for yourself when you're not believed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Mira. I really appreciate you for that. And one thing that I would recommend is when you're trying to advocate yourself and you're not being believed is try to figure out other avenues, other ways to escalate the situation to someone who has more authority or someone who has more decision-making power in that scenario, right? That could be other ways of navigating that barrier, of navigating that obstacle. And secondly, um, if you're able, to communicate in emails in those scenarios, because there's more accountability that happens when you email someone with regards to things that are affecting you. Because when you get the opportunity to escalate, you have a written record of what was communicated, what was the response of that communication, was there accommodation that was made, was there lack of accommodation made in that scenario. So those are like some of like the pathways that you can take if the straightforward way is not working. So yeah, just a thought for something to think about in the future for you there, Mira. I saw that there was another hand from Kate. Kate, do you still have a question?
Hi, I'm okay, thank you. But thank you very much, Gift.
No problem. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. Let's talk about decision makers. I kind of like touched upon this before, but I'm curious to know from you all, who is a decision maker? I kind of gave you a bit of a hint prior to this, but I'm curious to know, in your eyes, who counts as a decision maker? Doris.
I'm a long way through my journey, and I feel that I am the main decision maker. In a way, I know myself, I know my body, I know my circumstances, and I feel that part of this, I like the word that Mary used was bridge, a bridge to somewhere or someone or something. And I feel that I want to be stronger in my advocacy skills for myself so that I can be stronger in my advocacy skills for others. But I
Mm-hmm.
know I feel like I am my main decision maker as far as I know what I
Mm-hmm.
need. Um, and then, you kind of go up the chain of command, right? A no is not a no. A no is an opportunity to seek information from someone who may know better.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Doris. Anybody else? What's your take on who is a decision maker? Feel free to keep them coming in the chat as well.
So there's a question in the chat. What's a decision maker?
Yep, I'll be getting to that in just a second. I just want to hear any other guesses from the rest of you here on what do you think is a decision maker, or who is a decision maker. That's okay. So we'll go to the next slide. So a decision maker, it could be government officials. It could be, so government officials, that's basically the entire system. So that's mayors, that's prime ministers, that's MPs, right? The premiers of the province, those are part of the government officials within, the decision makers, because they make decisions on the economy. They make decisions on how our social services function, how much funding is afforded to us through those social services. So they very much are decision makers in that capacity. Businesses are also decision makers. They make decisions on how much they should price things for, how much should they sell them for, when should there be sales, when should there be discounts for certain stores, right? Like they make decisions around that on the value of the product that is being sold to you. And then there's public institutions, like schools, libraries, and such. And then there's organizations like, for example, March of Dimes Canada, and for example, BIST as well, Brain Injury Society of Toronto. Those are organizations that also hold the title of being a decision maker in terms of like what sort of programming do they provide, what sort of programs or workshops do they provide, right? So the decision makers in that right as well. And then in a less formal stance, family members are also counting as decision makers. If, let's say, you're not at the age of being an adult, let's say you are at the age of being a minor, family members would be the decision makers on what happens in your life or anything that requires adult supervision or adult response or intervention. So families, community members, even sometimes social workers, they are decision makers in that capacity. Um, and the general public can be a decision maker as well. if they're like trying to shape like attitudes of certain things. Has that provided a little bit of clarity on who counts as a decision maker? I hope I answered your question there, Cynthia. Is this a bit more clear, or do you have any other question there? And anyone else, please feel free to go ahead and ask further questions around this if you do have. All right, let's go to the next slide. So now let's talk a little bit about how do you find the right person. Oh, I see your comment here, your question here, Cynthia. Is a decision maker power of attorney? Absolutely. They are decision makers because they're deciding on making decision on behalf of someone. So if they're given that power to make those crucial decisions, they are counted or they are viewed as a decision maker from a legal standpoint because they have the power of attorney, they have the right to be a decision maker on behalf of someone who is unable to make the appropriate decisions for various reasons, whatever that scenario may be. So you're right on the money right there. Thank you so much, Cynthia. So how do you find the right person? It can be hard sometimes, and it can also be easy. Finding the right person would require you to, research the structures that exist. So you research the organizational structure or the government structure, where you are seeing kind of like the hierarchy of different decisions. How are they made? Who's responsible for what? Who's responsible for certain programs? Who's responsible for certain structures of that system. So that helps you decide like who is the right person I should be talking to with regards to ABCD. And then from a governmental standpoint, if let's say there's an issue within your neighborhood or within your city, so you have to figure out, okay, who's responsible for that jurisdiction? Who's responsible for that area? Who's the MP or who is the mayor of that city? Then that helps you kind of decide like who you should talk to instead of going in circles and trying to figure out who it is. You want to basically take the time to research and figure out who the person is responsible for that area of jurisdiction or those areas of responsibilities. Um, and while you're doing this, while you're trying to find the right person, the right decision maker as well, is you want to avoid people who just have like general influence or generic influence or influence that seems to be very vague. You want to target the person who can actually change the issue that you are trying to address or the issue that you're bringing up. Next slide. So it's very important as you're advocating that you advocate at the right time. Because sometimes it's not the right time to advocate. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't advocate ever. I'm just saying that there are sometimes sweet spots of advocating, and we call those windows of opportunity. Okay? Advocating at the right time, the key term is windows of opportunity. So there are predictable windows of opportunities, which are like regular ones, and there are also unpredictable windows of opportunities or irregular windows of opportunities. So let's speak about the predictable ones. So from a government standpoint, some of the predictable windows of opportunities for you to bring up issues that are affecting you and the rest of the community is during the period when there is budget consultations, where like provinces are basically trying to decide how much money should be invested in social services, how much money should be invested in education or towards healthcare or whatever it may be. So this happens quite regularly on almost a yearly basis. Those are the perfect times to advocate for change in that capacity. And other windows of opportunities is during election cycles, during post-election transitions as well, and sometimes even doing policy reviews. Those are perfect, predictable windows of opportunities for you to advocate. And some of the ways you can advocate is you can bring up your issue to the media. So that's to the news. They can write an article about your issue, so you reach out to, journalists online. And the best way to do that is you look for journalists who have covered, similar stories to yours, to the issue that you're bringing up. You reach out, you look on Google, you say like CBC journalist disability issues, for example, or CTV or Toronto Star, whatever news outlet you're looking at, these are the keywords you want to put. It's like whatever the issue may be. It could be healthcare, sure. You put, CBC News, healthcare, and then journalists, and then you get a list of, journalists who covered stories similar to that. And then now you have a direct, person of contact to reach out to share your story so that your story gets released to the news article to get media attention. Because once a story gets media attention, it actually pushes decision makers to make a change because they don't like being in the spotlight on issues that they're not handling well. Okay? And then unpredictable windows are within the government sense is public consultations, it's petitions or protests, um, community campaigns, and sometimes even committee hearings, and of course media attention, which I mentioned. Those are like unpredictable windows of opportunity. Those are unpredictable times for advocating. So that's pretty much it in that way when you're trying to get someone's attention to change something or not to change something. Any questions about that? I know this was a bit of a mouthful of information that I kind of blurted out. Any questions so far? I see in the chat here from Cynthia. How does it work for human rights? Can we place on social media if that landlord harasses and discriminates, and who can help in those process? Absolutely. So, for example, with the landlords, it's a very good question, Cynthia. For example, with the landlord, there are tons of journalists through various news outlets who've covered issues related to housing. So you'd still type in journalists housing articles and you'll see the different articles and you look for the name of that journalist and they would usually have a contact info listed there, like their email address, and you're able to email them about your issue. And for human rights, if you want, you can look for pro bono lawyers who work on human rights stuff. That's if you want to take a legal route. But I do want to caution that legal route takes time and it's very energy consuming. So if you don't have that energy to go through the legal route, because it may take years, it's not something that will receive attention immediately. I'd say don't do it, but if you have the capacity to do that, then by all means do that. Or you can take a simultaneous approach where you are taking the legal route and you're also taking a media route as well at the same time. Um, um, and then the other question you mentioned is there any period of time if the incident happens in 2019 is way too long to post on the social media? I wouldn't say so. You can still post about it. You can still bring it up to media or post about it on social media. There's no like period of time. If it's still affecting you as a person, 7 years later, by all means, you can still bring it up. But if it's been resolved since 2019, there isn't much of a point to bring it up in that right. Thank you. Those are great questions. Bernadette.
Thank you, Gift. Just a comment. I find that the initial person of contact is the most difficult one to get past. If they do not understand you, they put in their own spin on it, and it's very hard to get to the actual person that could make decisions or even campaign for you. So initial contacts, I think if we had a script or some particular wordings, I think it would help us. I don't know what that might be, but I have to say that to get a rapport going with that first person. Once you have the rapport, it's easier to be more on a friendly basis.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Bernadette. Absolutely. We actually do have templates in our website, which I will share with the team here, and I can forward it all to you. We have templates that you can use for those initial contacts when you're trying to get someone's attention, and that's through our Disability Advocacy Network page. But to answer your question, essentially, I'd say when you're trying to establish that initial contact, you want to approach it with good faith. Like no one is out there trying to make someone else's life difficult. So always go into the room or always go with the approach of trying to collaborate with the decision maker. So don't go there with an accusatory stance or an accusatory tone. You go in there and say, hey, I realize this is an issue, and I'm wondering if we can work together to address this because it is affecting me, because it is also affecting these people within my community. And if nothing is going to be done about this, it's going to make things worse in this way. So that's how I'd kind of approach things, is on a collaborative way and say, I understand that there may be, constraints within your role, but is there a way we can figure out how to navigate the barriers that you have as a decision maker, and the barriers that I experience as a person with a disability. So when you take that into account, basically you are saying, I understand that you don't have anything within your power to do everything that I'm asking of you, but let's figure out something that could alleviate this. So those are like some of the techniques you can use as an approach to decision makers, because in all honesty, decision makers also do not have all the power that is needed to make the change that is required. So we have to go into that room with that knowledge in mind. Okay, so in more practical terms, in the next slide here, how do you create a compelling argument? How do you create your own story? So the way to structure your approach or that initial contact, as Bernadette mentioned, is you want to start that initial contact by first drafting what the barrier you're experiencing. What is the barrier you're experiencing? So that's called a challenge. Okay. So what barrier are you or the community is facing? And then number two is a choice. So what action did you take to try to address that barrier? And why did you take that action? Or why did you make that decision as a perfect approach? And then outcome is what result, what change, or what did you learn throughout that process? Okay. So you're trying to structure your story in these three ways, in three C's. So try to remember three C's if you ever forget. So what is the challenge? What is the choice? And what is the outcome? And then you start drafting that before you submit your story. Any questions about creating a story, about this structure that I just highlighted, about the challenge, about the choice, about the outcome? Questions, comments, concerns? You structure your story by first addressing the challenge, and you structure your story by addressing the choice that you've made, and you structure your story by highlighting the results of the choices that have been made. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about linking your personal story to the public narrative. I see a comment here from Cynthia. Is there someone who can help create your story without feeling re-traumatized? Absolutely. You can do that with asking a friend that you trust, who you believe will be able to help create your story. We can do that with a family member you trust, anyone who is considered to be a close circle, who's part of your close circle. You can ask them to help you with that, and you can narrate your story that way. Another way to do that is, technology is a great tool as well. You can use technology. You can use things like, Copilot or ChatGPT, and you write down, like, this is my story. Please turn this issue into a story. This is what has affected me over the years, right? Or another option is record yourself. Record yourself on the phone or on the computer. You just start, speaking out your story, and then have someone type it so that they're not like misrepresenting what's in your mind. So you want to be you want to make sure that your voice really comes out in that process. So that's what I would suggest for that. So when we talk about linking personal story to public narrative, we're essentially trying to see who else is being affected in the community. And what is the urgency of this issue? So what happens if nothing changes, right? Um, and also, how does the issue align with their commitments? So the picture that we have here in the slide is an activist who essentially his wheelchair was damaged throughout his travels, and it happened that his experience was not isolated with him. It was also affecting other people who use wheelchairs, who travel by airlines, that had their wheelchairs damaged or had their wheelchairs not arrive at their destination. I'm just going to ask Connor to just quickly look up Tim Rowe's flight story online, and then he can pop in the link article in the chat here. But yeah, it's Tim Rose, and essentially he brought he brought his story to the news outlets, and it actually gained a lot of traction, and it actually inspired or encouraged many other folks with disabilities to also speak up about their experiences, because when you don't speak up about a certain issue, um, it may it may be something that may be helpful to someone else. So it's really, really important to share your story so that it encourages others to say, you know what, I've also experienced that myself as well. Thank you, Connor. Connor has posted the article link in the chat here for your ease of access. Yeah, and then I will go to the next slide on creating a focused ask. We're just going to full screen mode again. 1 second. There we go. Thank you. So you want to make sure that you're being very clear in your ask. So you do that by avoiding multiple requests. So you need to focus on 1 or 2 requests, okay? And it has to be something that matters the most for you. Because when you bring up multiple issues, it's hard to chip away at them. It's hard to work through them um, at the same time. They all deserve undivided attention in their own right. So it's very, very important to bring up at least only 1 issue, or no more than 2. Because when you're working with decision makers, they're dealing with, so many competing issues that arise. So you want to make sure your story is concise and you're bringing in 1 or 2 issues that matter most to you. And it has to be realistic, and it also has to be something that is within the decision maker's authority. Okay, and you do this by making sure your message is short, direct, and on point. And you do this by explaining the problem. You do this by also making a suggestion of the solution. And also, you conclude by saying why action is needed now. Okay, and make sure that the message is tailored to the decision maker's communication styles, or to the decision maker's priorities or scope of responsibility. Okay, so how do you prepare this? We'll go to the next slide. So in terms of preparation, you define your goals and your desired outcome. You draft a simple agenda. If, let's say, you're going to have an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting, you want to write down some points of things that you want to bring up. You want to prepare speaking notes, and you want to have your 1 ask or your 2 asks ready. So you want to also basically rehearse all of these. And also, you want to do a little bit of research. You want to do a little bit of research on the decision maker's background and what the past roles have been, what have been the things that have been involved or responsible of in the past, right? So you want to do a little bit of research beforehand. And then I can't stress this enough. You need to practice with someone, whether it's a friend, family member, a colleague, whoever it may be. You want to rehearse your script so that you're confident, you're not too nervous. A little bit of nervousness is not a problem. It's great, but you want to make sure that you have rehearsed, you own your story, you know what you want to bring up, you know what you want to come out of the meeting with. Okay? That's pretty much what you want to do. Let's go to the next slide on how do you request a meeting? So you request a meeting by deciding if a meeting is needed or if a simple email is enough. So you have to make a decision on that. Is this worth someone's time, like for them to put time out of their day, or can I just email them this, right? And then in that email, in that request of a meeting, you want to include information like who you are, why you are requesting to have a conversation with them, and if it's relevant, if this is related to the government, you want to also talk about which constituency you're part of, so which region or neighborhood you are part of. And also you want to also share some of your accessibility needs for that meeting to make sure that that meeting goes as smooth and comfortable for you as possible, right? And sometimes it's normal that you might not speak directly to the decision maker. You may speak, with a support staff or an admin assistant, and that's fine. And that could be part of like their filtering process. You can still bring it there. And if it gets to a point where that support staff or that admin person cannot be the mediator for a specific issue, then maybe you'd be escalated to the decision maker themselves. Because you gotta keep in mind that there's very limited time that these decision makers have. It's just a way to manage time and to manage the requests that are coming through. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about running the advocacy meeting. So you want to first start and finish with gratitude. That's very important. And during your meeting, please stay on message. Focus on the one ask or two at most. And you share your story using those key words that I mentioned earlier. The challenge, you address what the challenge is, you address what the choice you made, and the outcome you are hoping will be achieved. Okay. And then make sure you give the decision maker a chance and a space to respond, a chance to process what they just received. And then once that's all done and once they've responded to you, etc., make sure you summarized on what was agreed upon so that you are not misrepresenting or misremembering what was agreed upon. Okay. So always, reiterate or say it back to them to make sure you're all on the same wavelength. If not, you can always follow up with an email and say, thank you for meeting with me. These were the agreed upon next steps. Please correct me if I'm wrong or if there's something else missing. That's it. And also respect the time. Respect the allotted time that you're given. If you're given half an hour, stick to that half an hour. If you're given 1 hour, stick to that 1 hour. Because that will actually give you an opportunity to be invited back again for follow-ups on your issue. So it's really important that you respect the time that's allotted to you to discuss that issue. So next slide. I kind of already covered the next slide actually on the follow-up. So you want to send a thank you email, as I mentioned. If you do not hear a response within, 3 business days or within a week, you want to do a follow-up, especially if there's action that you are waiting for. So it's always important to do a follow-up if you do not receive any response. Next slide. You are probably going to be in the best position after you followed up to escalate something if the issue is not being addressed. So you escalate something if there's no response or the issue is not being addressed or the issue is being declared. Okay, or there's an ongoing lack of support. Okay, so that's when you escalate an issue. And the way you do that is you contact, alternative levels of government or alternative levels of directorship or management, and you build coalitions. What I mean by that, like you build, groups, allies, teams, because sometimes there's, power in speaking up with things as a group of people. There's power in numbers, so that's something that you might want to do. And as we spoke a little bit earlier, it might be of your best interest to address that issue with media. And also, if you're a social media person, post about it there and tag, the institution that you're trying to address within that social post. So that's pretty much it for today. In a nutshell, I was trying to kind of cram everything in to one presentation here. But these are some of the things that I talk about with our Disability Advocacy Network. These are some of the topics that we go through. Feel free to reach out to me in the next slide. Feel free to reach out to me. There's my email there, advocacy@martyrdowns.ca. I'm gonna share it with the team here as well, and they can share my email address. And also, I'm gonna ask Colin to also put in the link of our Disability Advocacy Network in the chat in case you want to join us and be part of the network and meet other activists and learn some of the skills that I teach. I can also follow up with the team here at BIST with our link, and they can forward it to you if that's easiest. Yes, Bernadette, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I probably will be following up with you for advocacy. I do have a question. What is the legislation or the act regarding accessibility of Canada? Disability Act, or do you know the title of it?
Yeah, there's the Accessibility Standards Act, which covers all of Canada. The
Okay.
AODA only covers Ontario, which is the
Right.
Accessibility of Ontario Disability Act.
Right, that I knew that. That's why I was asking about the federal one.
Yeah, the federal one is Accessibility Standards Canada
Accessibility
Act.
Standards Act. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you
yes.
know, do you know offhand what there might be regarding communication disability?
So it's not as extensive as the AODA. The AODA it covers all of those aspects. It's not just the physical
Right.
component, but the Accessibility Standards Act, it primarily focuses on the physical environment. It does touch upon briefly on other aspects, but not as extensive as the AODA.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, and I'll just give this moment to just put a pause on the recording if anyone would like to share any more comments or questions.